Tonight's a difficult class. It's probably one of the most difficult classes that I've ever taught because you never feel, as a teacher, there are just some subjects that you just really, you struggle to teach. You know what I'm talking about? And tonight's class is hinging our life on something that's really difficult to do. I think it, for sure, it has, of all the years that I've taught and that I've preached and I've been asked to sit in with reconciliations and problems and marriage issues and things. This is the one thing that's a deal breaker. It just is. It is the one hinge that if you could ever sink deep, I think it's the part of the stability in every single relationship that you encounter, and it is humility. Humility. Tell me something about humility. Tell me something about it. I want to hear what you think and what your thoughts are on humility. How important is it that I have the right view of God? Humility is all about having the right view of God and being in the right relationship with God, isn't it? Isn't it? Help me out with that. What's your thoughts on humility?
Being less. I mean, you're focusing on, no matter how successful you are or whatever, just being less. Just having that mindset. When you encounter people, be less.
Less of me and more of you. It's having a value and an importance that is so much more greater in the other person than you. But why is that hard? Why is that difficult? Why is it so difficult to humble ourselves to a place of the lowest of the low? Now, I'm not talking about allowing a person to tromp all over you. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about having a view of God, a view of others, so much more important than anything else going on in my life. Why is that difficult in a relationship?
To be in control.
There's one. There's one. Look up there. The opposite of. What's number one? Power. What's in the political realm right now? What's it about? Power, right? Isn't that number one? Power. Don't sometimes we come across, we want that power? Look at number two. Position. Man, we want to be first, right? Don't you want to be first? You ever waited in a long line before?
Yes.
When you go to your favorite, what's your favorite restaurant? What's y'all's favorite restaurant? It's anniversary night. Y'all's favorite restaurant is Posey's? Purveyor.
Yeah.
Ooh.
We're doing a real nice.
Purveyor.
Yeah.
You make a reservation?
Yeah.
You got to have a reservation. But what happens if you go there and there's a 2-hour-long wait and you really want to eat there? What are you thinking about?
Asking the manager to go ahead and pull a favor?
Misty, I'll be with you in a minute. Okay, all of y'all got your hands up. I'll get to you. For everybody on Facebook, they're swatting into that. So, yeah, what's going through your mind?
Anything you can to try to get up front.
Anything you can to get position. That's a problem, right? It's not a problem at Purveyor. And then look at the last one. It is the prestige. I mean, we want prestige in life. It's the opposite. Humility is the opposite. It is taking on the form of a slave, not a servant, not a bondservant, but a slave. That is humility. We're going to look at that in a minute. So let me tell you what I did last night. I made some phone calls to some people, and I just wanted to know what their thoughts were on humility. So you know what I did? I called 4 elders from our congregation, and I simply asked them, and I called them at like a weird time so I could catch them off guard. So I think I called you last. Was it like midnight? Not too late? So here's what I did. I asked each one of our elders, because humility starts where? It starts at the top of any organization, right? So I said, I want to start at the top of the Lord's church. And because I know these guys really well, and I know like you do, but I wanted to get their thoughts. So we really didn't talk about anything else. So when I called, I just said, what's your thought on humility? It was pretty much that quick, wasn't it?
Yep.
Which you're a great listener. And so it blew me away at how different each one of them was. So here's what I did. I wrote them down. So Davy, and I've got their permission to do this. So when I asked Davy, what is humility? Davy said, when you can get down and stay down on your knees. Wow. What a great definition. Man, that's coming from an elder. When you can get on your knees and you stay there. And that's humility. Jay said, it's not thinking much of yourself. It's always thinking of others. And he said humility is being an elder. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
He also said it starts at home, and then what happens at home bleeds into the church, and then it bleeds into the world. Alvy said it is agape love. What is agape love? When you think about the word agape, what does that mean?
Love them anyways.
What?
Love them anyways.
Love them anyway. So agape love means unconditional. It means that I don't put conditions on our relationship. You don't have to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G for me to accept you and love you. I meet you where you are. I meet you where you are. Now when you think about that unconditional love, I think about the prodigal son. And that father, he knew the country the kid went to. He knew what the kid was going to face. And what did he do? He let him what? Let him go. That's humility. And when he saw the kid make the turn, he put a lot of conditions on him coming home, didn't he? What did he do, Richard?
Ran to meet him with open arms.
He ran and he got on his knees. He fell. He fell on him and he kissed him and he accepted him because he understood where that kid was coming from. See, that's a picture of humility in that father. He didn't say, you got to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G. He showed him humility. The son also showed the father humility.
From what I understand and have studied too, you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
But back in that time period, that father accepting him back in the house was not what they were supposed to do.
Yeah. Wasn't supposed to give him the inheritance. If you think about the dress that he would have worn, the attire he would have worn, it would have been very difficult for him to run. They didn't really run back then. What he had on, this is a picture of a father dropping everything to run to the son, to follow him.
Back
It was
then,
a.
they weren't even supposed to accept him back in.
That's right. That's right. It was a. Again, it's this idea of humility, this unconditional love. Alvy went on to say that it is something that is never above you. You're never above anybody. It's encouragement. Its actions speak louder than words. And then Alvy went on to talk about this. Alvy said that, when you think about Jesus and all the places that he went and taught and everything, did Jesus already know the answer of the things that he talked to people about? Yeah, he already knew. And Alvy said, what's remarkable about that is Jesus healed people that he knew were going to crucify him. He healed them anyway, didn't he? Think about that. I mean, Jesus healed people that were going to curse him. Didn't Peter do that? Didn't Jesus heal people that were going to deny him? And didn't he do those things for people that were going to betray him? Didn't he do it anyway? Isn't that a beautiful picture of humility? And then Steve says, I'll let you speak since you're here, Steve. What did you say humility was?
You can go ahead.
He slept since then.
That's humility. He's retired too. Steve said that it's putting the thoughts of others and the well-being above yourself. He said it's putting other people's well-being. In other words, what is best for you, I will do. And I will do it with the right attitude. That's humility. Now, there was something remarkable because Jamie and I, when we were very young, when we got married, this has been about 24 years ago, who took us in? This is the easy one. Who took us in here at church? Yeah, Steve and Barbara did. Steve and Barbara took us under their wing. And we were like Zach's age, Zach and Maddie. And they adopted us and they took us in and we'd go to their house and eat. And they would minister to us, and they would help us, and they would just love us. Made an impact in our life, but at that time, their parents were in good shape. Their parents were coming to worship here. They were visiting. I want you to tell everybody about the humility of watching your parents and the role reversal. It'd be better coming from you.
For
for so long, Barbara and I both, looked up, to, her parents as they were, we had such a high esteem for them, and basically, for her dad, I always thought of him as, Superman. I thought he was, the indestructible man, always, firm, always there to help in any situation. And then it was almost like turning off, flipping a light switch. He went from being that indestructible man to being, he couldn't take care of himself anymore. And as a result, couldn't take care of his wife anymore. We had to, and we just assumed that a little bit of rehab, he'd be back as good as normal. He never got back. It was just almost overnight that his strength left him, and like you say, it was a role reversal. Barbara and I had to step in and do a lot of things for them that they normally did for themselves and normally helped us out with. So it was so strange, and they were uncomfortable with it because they were so used to being independent, and we were a little bit uncomfortable with it because we looked up so much to them, and now having to do these things for them that we knew that they had done for themselves so often. And it was a humbling experience, but we got through it.
You got through it. Richard, your illness, tell us about that. I don't want to steal it. I didn't ask you to talk about it, but I want you to talk about how humility brought you to where you guys are today.
Well, I mean, I can look back. It's almost 3 years right now. I mean, I didn't even know I was in this world. I had literally, I think, given up, and Diana, she took over, talking about taking care of somebody. She would not let me go. She started fighting for me, and when you think of, and even my kids, my oldest son, he gave me a lot of grief growing up. But I tell you what, when I look back now, what he did for me as well, and my girl.
Humbling experience.
But when you think you're at life's end like that, like Steve said earlier, his father-in-law, I'm not going to say I'm a Superman by any means, but I felt like I was the provider, I was the protector of our family, and it just wasn't there. It was like Steve said, that light switch. And it's through prayer that I'm here.
You know, how many of y'all were at Richard and Dinah's in Ardmore when they moved? How many of y'all were there? Was there anybody in this room there? You were there. I was there. You two. 4 people here was there? I thought it was over for you. I did. And to see you today is so humbling. And to see you respond and remain faithful, it's a humbling experience. It humbled me. As we look deeper into humility, I want you to turn over to James 4:10. Okay? Dusty, you got James 4:10? Brother? 1 Peter 3:8. Okay? Kyle, Ephesians 4:2. Linda, Philippians 2:3 and 4. And Steve, 1 Peter 5 and 7. And then we're going to look at a story. Okay? Read it real slow so I can understand it. Whenever you're ready.
James 4:10, humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and he will exalt you.
All right, so how do you get exalted? How do you get lifted up? You want to be lifted up? You want to be where you want to be? How do you do that?
Let God do
You let God do it. You let God do it. Read that one more time, Dusty.
it. Humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and he will exalt you.
So what does that look like, humbling yourself in the sight of God? What's that look like? You know, we read that scripture, but what does that mean? What does that look like?
I think you go back and read verse 8 after that.
Read it.
And it says, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you.
Okay.
Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded.
So you got some responsibility in the humility side, don't you? You've got it. Look, this is a picture of when every single thing against me is stacked against me. Now look, I may have even contributed to some of that. How many of you in here had something, as they've talked about medically and family, how many of you in here have really had something stacked against you to the point that you were about ready to give up? You're about ready to give up. And what that might mean is that not your life, but maybe your faith. Has your faith ever been tested so much that you were ready to kind of just close this up and maybe just set this on the shelf for a little while? Because I'm going to tell you, I've had times where I couldn't get enough of this. And I've also had times where I've closed it and I didn't want any of it. Do you know what I'm talking about? This is what he's talking about. This is the point. This is the point of spiritual death. That I humble myself to the point, even as Christ did, to what? To death. To death. Does that make sense? It means that I take on the lowest of the low to deal with my... It is a surrendering. I had one time in my military career, and I have prayed to God that I never ever have to do this again. I had to draw my weapon one time. And I learned really quick that I didn't like that, and I didn't want any part of that. And I was trained to do it. I was overly trained to do it. I was at an Air Force Special Operations unit in command, and I knew how to do it. I knew how to do it very well. Not only was I trained at it, I was very good at it. But when it came to a real life situation, I didn't like it. I hated it. I'd rather just give you my gun. I didn't like it. Therefore, I couldn't stay in that unit. You want me with you in a bad situation? I know the answer to that. Doesn't mean that I couldn't do it if I had to do it, but I did not like it. I did not like the thought of having to be in the position of taking someone's life. I just didn't like it. This is the picture of surrender, what it looks like. Now, fortunately, the person that was on the receiving end of what had happened, they did this. What does that mean? It means I surrender. I give up. This is a picture spiritually of what we do. We surrender the issue to God. We surrender it. I give up. I let it go for the cleansing. Does that make sense? You want to fix the problem and you try to hang on to it and keep a little bit over here and keep a little bit over here and not be real with God, not be genuine with your faith. Guess what happens? You're not exalted. You have to let it all go. As if you will leave all the cards on what? The table. Never sit across the table from a couple that's having problems and introduce the thought of humility and them not apply it and the marriage work out beautiful. If you will apply it. Humility. I'll give up myself to meet your needs, and I'll do it with the right attitude. I'll go where you say go. The rich young ruler. What did the Lord want him to give up? What did he want him to give up? Everything. Everything. He said, look, I've kept all these things. I've done everything that the law says do. He says, but wait a minute. He said, you sell everything you have, and then you give it to the poor, and then you follow me. He said, just give it up. Let it go. Surrender it all. And I'll give you something to follow. Did he do it? He didn't do it, did he? It's a problem. All right, who's got 1 Peter 3:8?
Finally, all of you be of one mind, having compassion for one another, love as brothers, be tender-hearted, be courteous.
Pretty good definition of humility, isn't it? You want to work a problem out with another brother? What's the best thing you can do? Be what he just read. Read those bullets again. Read those characteristics.
All of you be of one mind, having compassion for one another, love as brothers, be tenderhearted, be courteous.
Is there going to be some people you just don't get along with? Yep. Are there going to be some people that you're just not going to be best friends with? Yep. Can you have an agreement to disagree and it be unsinful? Yep. But you know what we're to do? We're to love each other. I'm to be willing at any moment in time to give up for the betterment of you, as much as it depends on me. Does that make sense? How about the next one, Ephesians 4:2?
With all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love.
All right. So how do you bear with people? How do you do that? Give me an example of a situation that we may have to bear with somebody. Give me a situation. Loss of a loved one. They just can't get over it. You ever met somebody that lost a loved one, a spouse, and you hadn't seen them at worship in 2 or 3 months? And you call them up and you say, "What's wrong?" You know what I'm talking about? Maybe you got somebody in your family that's an addict. They have an addiction. And because they just don't get it, and even though they're trying, we hold them to a standard to where they can't meet that standard overnight. How is an addiction worked out most of the time? Quickly? No. It is a very long process. Addictions don't start overnight. They don't end overnight. You have to walk with people. You have to hurt with people. You have to cry with people. You have to celebrate with people. With a person who has an addiction, do you know that every day away from a drink or a smoke or not watching pornography or a person who's addicted to talking about people and gossiping, do you know that every single day that doesn't happen in their life, that is a victory? We bear with people. Steve, let me ask you a question. If I am suffering spiritually and I've got something that's got a hold of me, can I count on you?
Yes,
For how long?
however long it takes.
You gonna stay with me? I can count on you.
That's what a faithful friend does.
Jack, how long have we known each other?
13.
Since we were 13. That's a long time, right? You seen me high? You seen me low? You've always been there. Why? That's what friends do. A friend loves at all times. Look, this is the essence of bearing with. This is the essence of carrying that load that we should be to each other. This is humility. It's accepting each other at our worst, not participating, but accepting each other in that worst and not giving up on each other. We'll look at that in a minute. We'll talk more about that. Philippians 2, 3, and 4.
Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem others better than himself.
It's exactly what Jack talked about. You do nothing with the ambition that it's going to benefit you more than anybody else. But you do what? You look for a way for it to benefit other people. Somebody told me this one time. He said, you help enough people get what they want, and guess what? You never have to worry about you. Is that true? Teresa, you're up and you're shaking. What's your thought on that?
People get what they want, and you end up with what you want.
You end up getting what you
You're
want.
not being selfish about
Yeah.
yourself.
We got any guys in here that do dishes? Gary? Now, Gary, wait a minute. Now, I went to your house. I put them in the dishwasher. That's doing dishes. Now, Gary, I went to your house one time. I've been over there. And your sink was full of... No, I'm kidding. We got any guys in here that clean commodes? Johnny? Back here, he cleans commodes. How about scrubbing them? We got any guys in here that'll scrub the shower? We got any guys in here that'll fold laundry? We got any guys in here that'll do the worst chores of the house? Greg, don't be looking over there at her. I've been in your house.
Got my viewpoints is what I do.
Christian, you willing to do anything around the house?
All of it.
Anything.
Yes, sir.
You'll do all of it with a smile.
Yeah.
All right now. All right now.
That's too much.
We don't even do it with a smile.
Now I will put some holes in your sheetrock
Yeah,
with a smile.
with a smile.
Linda, read it again. Read it again. You got Philippians 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4.
Uh-huh.
Fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord and of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others.
That is humility. I watched my father-in-law, Jerry, in one of the weakest, worst moments as a son when his mother was very sick. It was one of the most beautiful experiences that I ever watched of a son taking care of his mother. And at that time, he wasn't a Christian. And you know the story, he became a Christian. I'll never forget that. I know some Christian men that wouldn't stoop low to tie somebody's shoe if it was untied. That's sad. This is the picture of what humility at its worst looks like. In the worst situation for us, taking care and doing the things for each other that has nothing to do with my interest, but meeting the interest of others with the right attitude. This is a picture of Christ. Beautiful picture. Does that make sense?
Think about, like in the Bible, washing feet,
Ah,
which is something, I mean, in our minds, I mean, that's about as nasty you can get. I mean, if I have to wash Zach's feet, but I mean, that's the most humble. I mean, that's being just humble. I mean, that's saying you will do anything. It doesn't affect you as far as.
now let's take it a step level. Let's take it did I say that right?
Let's don't talk about Zach.
To the next level.
Do somebody else.
Let's take it a step to the next level. We're going to read John 13. It's great you brought that up because we're going to read John 13 in just a minute. And that's what it does. But let's take it to the next step. I want you to picture somebody right now that you don't like. Would you do that for me? Now don't tell anybody. And it really don't matter because God already knows. Right? And that's the only one that should know. But I want you to picture somebody right now that's harmed you. Maybe it was unintentional. Maybe it was intentional. But hopefully you don't really have somebody in mind like that. But let's say that you do. And let's say that they caused you some grief and some pain. Maybe it was ignorance. Maybe they were a master manipulator. And let's just say that you really, really, really dislike them and you're working on loving them. Okay? Is that fair? You going to wash their feet?
I think so. I think it makes you feel like you're closer to God. I mean, if you're willing to do that, then, I mean, be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah. You see, it'd be easy for me to go over to Steve's house. And it'd be real easy if Barbara called me and said, listen, Adam, I can't, Steve is very sick. I'm not home. And he's got the stomach virus. And he needs you to go over there and I need you to go over there and take care of him and clean it up. It'd be an honor. It'd be an honor. It'd be easy, Misty, for me to do that for Johnny. Destiny, I'll do it. Kyle, I'll do it. I'll take care of you. You with me? You see, that's easy. You see, that's easy. Y'all live too far away.
So it is.
I'll send Richard.
It's conditional.
I'll send Christian and Richard and Dale. Listen, this is not the idea of humility. You're easy to love. I hope I'm easy to love. This is your enemy. This is a picture of your enemy, you washing their feet, you taking care of them. That is humility. 1 Peter 5, 5 and 7.
I'm sorry, go ahead and read
Yeah, okay. 1 Peter 5.
Casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you.
Through 7. 5 through 1 Peter 5, 5 through 7. I'm sorry.
Likewise, you younger people, submit yourselves to your elders. Yes, all of you, be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility, for God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you.
All right. Sam, I can call on you. You're a whole lot smarter than me. When you think about the word oppose or resist, what comes to your mind? Enemy. What comes to your mind, Gary? If you see me resist somebody, what comes to your mind? I oppose you. What comes to your mind?
Watching cops.
Watching cops. What comes to your mind? Resist. Think about that word, resist. Oppose.
I mean, conflict.
Conflict. You ever had somebody resist arrest? And what did that make you feel like? What happened to your heart rate?
Well, it goes up to it's a fight.
It's a fight.
They're fighting.
It's a fight. Uncle Ned, military, resist. What comes to your mind? Fight. It's an all-out war. I want you to read that part again about what God does. Read verse 7. I think it's in verse 7. Go ahead and read verse 6.
Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you.
Okay, read the part about God resist. That may be verse 5.
God resists the proud.
All right, stop right there. If you, listen to this, if you cannot shed pride, if you can't shed it, you become God's what? You become God's fight. My Bible says God opposes the proud. Listen, that means you are opposite of God. God opposes you. Can you imagine being on the wrong side of God?
Luke 9:23.
Read it for us.
Jesus said, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross and follow me daily." And if I'm to deny myself, it's like I have to empty.
Pour myself out, wring myself out. Jesus said, well, we'll just read it. That is a beautiful thought. None of us want God to oppose us. But look, when you can't, what's the opposite of humility? Proud. How many people will lose their soul because they're too proud to obey the gospel? How many people? What does the Bible say? How wide or narrow is the path that leads to destruction? It is wide, and many go after it. Do you know why? Pride.
Yeah. I don't want to get into it, but next week I've got the Devo, and the story I'm looking at has to be the strongest when it comes to this.
Okay.
But, you know, we're about to look at that example of Jesus, right? We've already talked
Yeah.
about it.
Yep.
And it takes Jesus one time to show humility, to illustrate it.
John.
If you look at some of the other things we've mentioned tonight, where Jesus has to drive you to humility. They have to teach you a lesson. But
Break you.
Most of the time, they don't learn it, do they? I mean, you talked about the prodigal son learned some. You know, the apostles on the boat. Hey, that was a lesson for them, humility. Peter in the garden, right? He opposed. When a Christian has learned humility, they're making a statement. And that statement is that God is in control. God has the power, the position, the prestige.
Great point.
And the lesson I'm going to look at next week in the Devo is, I think it's the most powerful one that teaches that lesson right there. So we're looking at this where Jesus is showing what humility is.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's that we've got to resist that pride and resist and not be so stubborn and show humility.
Sam nailed it. Deny self. Deny self. Okay, listen, this is beautiful. John 13:1. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come, that he should depart from this world to be with the Father, having loved his own Son, who were in the world, he loved them to the end. You ever watched anybody die before? You ever watched the moments of them dying? You've seen that before. You know what that feels like. How traumatic is that for someone who's not a Christian? How beautiful is it for someone that is? This is a picture of the Lord getting ready to be brutally, y'all, I did a 13-week study over 10 years ago, and it was the most fantastic movement of my Christian walk on the crucifixion. Actually, what a medical autopsy of Jesus' body would have looked like after this entire death. It's so gruesome. Highly encourage you to do it. Highly encourage you to study the autopsy, the modern day autopsy of what Christ's body, his mental state, his emotional state would have been like. He's preparing for that. This is a picture of the final moments that he's meeting with a group of people that he loves. Pick 12 people you love the most. You know you're fixing to die a brutal death. Who are the 12 you're going to meet with, and what kind of message are you going to have for them? Now watch this. He loves them to what? The end, as Steve said. And supper being ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, that he had come from God and was going to God, I want you to look. He did 6 things. Number 1, he rose from the supper and he laid aside his garment. So what did he? Number 1, he rose from supper, he laid aside his garment. What does that mean, laid aside his garment? What would he have done? What's that mean?
He was like preparing for what he was about to do, so
Yeah.
so he could do it a little easier.
Yeah. This would have impeded his movement, the garment that he had on. Number 2, as he arose, number 1. Number 2, he laid aside his garment. Number 3, he took a towel and he girded himself. He put the towel around him. After that, number 4, he poured water into a basin and began, number 5, to wash the disciples' feet. Number 6, and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. Now I want you to picture this towel being around him. He must be on the floor and he's washing their feet. He's poured the water and he's got the towel around him and he is washing their feet off with the water and the towel that is attached to his body. Wow. What's he know about these guys right now? What's he know about them?
We're going to betray him.
Everything. 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 He still does it. That's powerful.
That's how perfect he was. See, sometimes we think, well, why can't we be more like him? Because we're not perfect. So our minds are going to be like, I know you're about to do something to me. You know, and then we start thinking.
Now, can we use
not
that?
kind of thing.
Now, I'm with you, and my mind is clicking that way, but can we use that as an excuse?
No. But I'm just saying, don't think you're perfect and can do that and be all, everything's, you know, because that's really hard to live up to here.
We're emotional.
And yes, and, you know.
We make emotional decisions.
There's a stigmatism as far as being humble. They equate that with being weak, especially boys or men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you say if you're raising sons, you want them to be humble, but you also want them to be forceful or you know, not being somebody that just gets walked over.
How do you heap coals of fire upon people? How do you do that? What'd you say? Greg said with love. Now watch this. This is the most beautiful picture of love. Watch what happens. Look at the answer here. Then he came to Simon. All right, he comes to Simon Peter. Peter said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? ? Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. What's he alluding to? What's he alluding to by saying that? He's talking about cleansing him, cleansing his heart. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. And Jesus said to him, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him, therefore he said, you are not all clean. Talking about Judas, probably. So when he had washed their feet, taken his garment, sat down again, he said to them, do you know what I've done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and your teacher, have washed your feet, Listen to this. This is not an option. This is not an option. You also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Easy? Do this.
No.
An example? Yes. Something we should strive for? Amen. Guess what? I got news for you. Steve, where's it got to start?
With yourself.
With yourself. With yourself. Now, if this is the idea, the only thing that can get us there is a lot of prayer and a lot of God working on us and a lot of study and a lot of the gospel going into my heart. Right? It's a challenge, right? Big challenge. Next week we talk about encouragement. Thank y'all so much for listening and participating. I love you.